Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for returning for our next presentation. We have three more left, and as you can see, all have been so just smartly done and great passion and great work, expecting a lot of great things from people. Also from you, Shelby, a great project from Shelby Barlow on the Penn Health Initiative, so good luck.
Hi everybody, so we're coming up on the home stretch, so stay with me. Now we get to talk about sex. So I'm not actually going to talk about sex, I'm going to talk about Penn Health Initiative, which is a group of Penn students that provides health education to middle schoolers in West Philadelphia. So to start, I'm going to talk a little bit about my background. I included a picture of where I'm from, so that way I can prove once and for all that Mississippi does have a coastline, and I do live on it. There it is. Right next to that is a picture of me, one of my favorite pictures from my childhood, with my younger sister. I think it does a great job of just showcasing my personality. I have always been a very confident child. And then also my sister is definitely one of the most important people in my life. You can see that we're dressed similarly, and unlike a lot of big sisters, I loved that about us. I love that she emulated everything that I did. I really thought of us as a team, and to this day I think being a big sister is definitely the most important leadership position I've ever had. And I have it for a lifetime, so I take it very seriously, and it's very integral to my identity. Growing up with Stephanie and kind of having a mother-daughter relationship made me realize my love for mentorship and just interacting with kids, watching them grow, being present for their milestones. And so moving from my childhood, I now go to the University of Pennsylvania, where I'm studying political science. And when I say that I go to the UPenn, people often ask me, like, how did you get from Mississippi to UPenn? I'm actually the only person in the sophomore class at Penn, or junior class actually, the only person in junior class at Penn from the state of Mississippi. So I'm all alone up there, and I ended up going to Penn through a program called QuestBridge, and QuestBridge completely changed the trajectory of my life. Because before I knew about QuestBridge, I was just going to go to community college, stay close to home, keep working, because I do have a lot of responsibilities at home. And I didn't realize that a place like Penn was accessible for someone like me. And so the point of QuestBridge is to connect low-income and or first-generation students with elite institutions. You have to achieve academically, obviously, to be admitted to the institutions. When you apply through QuestBridge, you're not guaranteed admission, but if you are admitted as a Quest Scholar, you're guaranteed very generous financial aid. So now I'm halfway done with my degree at Penn, and it looks like I'm going to graduate debt-free. Which is huge, not only for me, but also for my family. Everyone says all the time that when I get married, I can't change my last name because I'm the first Barlow to do anything worthwhile. So, no pressure. So anyway, moving on to what Penn Health Initiative actually is. Penn Health Initiative was established because in Philadelphia, there is no longer any kind of basic health curriculum. Philadelphia is currently the poorest city in the nation, with a deep poverty rate of about 22%. And the school district of Philadelphia has gone through financial crisis after financial crisis. Lots of schools closed, there's a high teacher turnover rate, and so things that are considered non-essential, like health education, for example, have been eliminated. Obviously, this is a huge problem, which I'm going to touch on, talking about the communities that we serve and what it means for us to be present for them. So just a brief history of us. We were established in January 2013 at one elementary school, and it started off just strictly as a sex education program that would be taught monthly. So we just went in and talked about the nitty-gritty, like what sex is, what it means to be safe, what contraception is, just options like that. And then in April of 2014, so a little bit over a year later, we expanded to 2 other elementary schools. And I say elementary schools, but in Philadelphia, elementary is kindergarten through 8th grade, so it is an older student body, middle school students actually. And then summer 2014, so obviously I was not at Penn yet at this point, I was still not in high school, but anyway. They began to develop a more comprehensive health education because they decided that they wanted to move it away from just being about sex ed, and it's at this point more like a lifestyle class. And we now teach weekly, so once a week each school sees us, not just once a month. And who we serve is really important because we serve, like I said, 3 different elementary schools, but the one school that I'm in charge of is Huey Elementary, and it's definitely the elementary school with the most need. 100% of Huey students receive free or reduced price lunch, which means that every single student that we interact with lives at or below the poverty line. And then 99% of Huey students are African American or identify as biracial, 2 or more races. So white, Hispanic, and Asian students make up barely 1% of the population at Huey. And so it's another reason Penn Health Initiative is really meaningful for me, because when I'm there interacting with the students, I do see a lot of myself in them. And my hope for them is that they also look at me and see themselves. Because like obviously I'm at a place in life right now where I kind of like, my background kind of showcases that even given a lot of obstacles, you always have choices. And that's kind of what Penn Health Initiative aims to do. It's not just about sex education. When I talk about Penn Health Initiative, people have asked me like, oh, how did you get passionate about this? And it wasn't even necessarily the actual sex education that made me passionate. It was more just having the opportunity to work with students that are missing a lot of lifestyle skills that they don't have access to in the classroom and then don't really get at home because their parents are working and they're tired. And there's a lot that goes on in Philadelphia as far as like the school system and poverty, and the metro stations never work and people can't get places. So there's just a lot stacked up against these kids. And it's really meaningful for me to be in a classroom with them one-on-one. So what we teach, I have listed off a whole host of things that we teach. As you can see, we're a very, very inclusive curriculum. We talk about the less exciting things like nutrition, not a fabulous lesson for the kids. I'm not super fond of that one. But we also talk about nitty-gritty things like puberty and sex education, obviously. And then we cover body image, conflict resolution, stress management. And those are all very important for children living in the inner city, because obviously being at school is stressful, being at home is stressful, and it's really important to us to talk to the kids about what their options are in de-escalating conflict in their lives, because as like Emerson mentioned in his own presentation, there's a huge issue with punishment versus treatment, and a lot of times the kids are going through things at home that make them act out inappropriately, and a school like Huey has a very high suspension rate, a very high teacher turnover rate. So we do our best to talk to them about like what their options are. So it's not just about physical health, it's also just about mental health and social health. And we also talk about sexuality and consent, because most of us are women, and we talked about when and if our parents gave us the sex talk, we never heard anything about consent, like no means no, anything other than an enthusiastic yes means no. So that's something we try to work in with the kids, and they're very receptive to it, which is really exciting for us. So what are our issues? So my capstone differs a little bit from other people's in that it's already established and I'm working on improving it. So I had to look at it as Penn Health Initiative being the group that I want to help. And the first issue we had is, the most major one, is the loss of our treasurer in the fall of 2015. She actually left Penn unexpectedly without any type of warning, and she was never very transparent in the first place when she was at Penn. So nobody really knew how funding worked or how our grants worked, who we were recognized by on campus, and trying to reach out to her has been ineffective. She hasn't responded to us. She's still in control of our checking accounts. So fall of 2015, we had no money, nothing. And everyone was really at a loss about what we're supposed to do, because Penn Health Initiative isn't very expensive to run, but we do provide transportation for our teachers, so that way they don't have to worry about Ubering or walking. And we also have a lot of materials that we bring with us, so that way it's a more engaging classroom environment for the children. So right now we've just been doing like small-scale fundraising activities, and then also like Penn Health Initiative members who are all very dedicated, a lot of times just spend money out of their own pockets to make sure that the kids have what they need. And then we have roles with no defined responsibilities. So in that case, they're not even really roles, they're more just titles. Like we have a president, we have a vice president, we have a new treasurer, but nobody really knows what that means. Kind of right now it's like the president does everything, and if she can't do it, I do it. And everyone else is just like, well, it's getting done. That's really problematic in organization, especially because we are a very top-down organization in that we have an executive board and then teachers. So if we're not organized, neither are the teachers, and they're the most important part of the process. So that's very problematic. And then no set meeting times. We have a real issue with trying to appease everyone's schedule. So often it'll just be a post in the group me or fill out a when to meet about who can make this meeting if we have it at 7 p.m. on Wednesday. It's hard to get people to respond to things like that because they're so busy. And then we'll have the meeting, a couple of people show up, no minutes are taking. It's just very, very ineffective. And amazingly, Penn Health Initiative does run very well. I know I'm really telling you guys some things up here. But just seeing how effective we are, even with all of this disorganization, is what really inspired me to want to make it better, because I feel like we could do an even better job than we're already doing if we just had some organization. And then communication among the schools is lacking. So like I said, we service 3 different elementary schools, and I am in charge of Huey Elementary. I interact all the time with my teachers. We're very cohesive. Everybody knows each other. We're friends outside of Penn Health Initiative, whereas I don't know anyone at Lee or anyone at Comegys. Like Julie, for example, asked me how many people were involved in Penn Health Initiative, and I couldn't even answer her because there's just such a lack of cohesion among us. So that's something that I want to seek to fix. And then communication with the Philadelphia school teachers is lacking. This is an issue that's not entirely on Penn Health Initiative because the Philadelphia School District in general has an issue with just communicating things. When you have a high teacher turnover rate, it's like every semester we're working with someone new who has no idea who we are or what we're about, what we need from them, and that's really problematic because it takes at least a month to explain everything and make that connection, and then within a few months we're met with the same issue again. And then we have very weak recruiting efforts. I actually found out about Penn Health Initiative through my sorority's listserv, and as far as since I've been involved, that's kind of our recruitment process, just emailing the listservs you're a part of. And since most of us are sorority women, it means that most of our applicants are white women, which there's nothing wrong with having a lot of white women applicants, but obviously we teach boys and we don't teach them with the girls when we talk about sex education and puberty, for example, because there's no way you're going to get 12-year-olds to have an open dialogue if they're in the same room. And then also most of the students that we service are black and low income, and most of the teachers teaching them are upper middle class white women, and that's problematic in terms of representation. So we would just like to see more diversity, and I don't think that there's a problem with diversity and interest. I think it's just a problem with our recruiting efforts. A lot of people who would be interested don't even know who we are or what we do. And then there's no formal training for teachers. So in one sense, it's very beneficial that we have a lot of autonomy because of the Philadelphia School District not really having time to deal with us. So we can kind of make decisions as we want, and it really is like a very Penn-run thing. But the problem is we're all undergrad students with no qualifications to teach. And there is an issue that we're kind of guinea pigging the kids. So that's something that I struggle with because on the one hand, it's like if we're not teaching them, nobody is. But it's also like I could go into a classroom and tell them that STDs don't exist, and nobody would be in there to tell me, yes, they do. So that's very problematic and something that I want to work on. So I have come up with a couple of solutions for the issues that I've listed. So this is kind of my action plan. It's going to take up the next couple of slides. And the first and most obvious thing we need to do is just define responsibilities for each role so everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing at any given time. And I gave an example of a new role I want, like Vice President of Communication and Curriculum, because I think if we have one person in charge of always communicating with the Philadelphia School District, it will help us a lot in just knowing what we're supposed to be doing, because a lot of times it's me reaching out or it's the president reaching out, and there are so many different schools that we deal with and so many people that we deal with that nobody really knows what's going on. So I really want just a way to get it all in one location with one person who has every idea of what's happening. And then I also just want to set a specific meeting schedule. I don't think it's effective to every single week send a notification out to the group and ask them when they can meet. I think what's more effective is just telling them when we will be meeting, and then if necessary, or actually definitely, we'll type up minutes, send it to the listserv so everyone knows what we discussed, what we're going over. And then I also want to write a manual that includes all of this information. That's definitely something that will help in sustainability, because right now we don't really have one, even though we've been around for 3 years. And I think in the years to come, if everyone in Penn Health Initiative has one document that they can reference for rules and guidelines, that's how America works. I feel like that's a great move for us to make. So then for funding. So like I said, we're not a very expensive organization, but it does still cost money to run Penn Health Initiative. And through doing a little research, I figured out that we're recognized by our Civic House on campus, and I reached out to someone who works at the Civic House to ask her what the grant process is, how we go about funding, and I found out that they're completely redoing the program this year, so they actually don't have resources to grant funding, but she told me that if I sought Student Activities Council recognition, so moved away from, we could still be recognized by Civic House, but then also just be recognized by the student organization on campus, then we would be able to receive an annual grant through them. So that's definitely something we'll be seeking to do as soon as we get back to campus. And we've been in contact throughout the summer, and she's helped me a lot with figuring out just the money problem, which is our biggest issue, so I'm very excited about that. And then also just small-scale fundraising activities carried out by members of Penn Health Initiative. Those have been fairly effective. We usually do bake sales outside of a bar on campus on Thursday nights, and the longer it goes, the more lucrative it becomes. So those have been great. And I also want to move to I think it would be great to, A, bring them to Penn's campus so they can see like what colleges, where we're from, and then also it shows the community, like the kids that we're trying to service. It really puts a face to the problem and takes it out of abstraction. And then also reaching out to local businesses for sponsorship. I've already reached out to 2 local businesses that I know people personally, and they're completely supportive of making a pledge. And I asked for a small pledge because, like I said, it's not very expensive to run. But just the idea of like local community involvement, I think having everyone in the Philadelphia community aware of like what kind of issues the Philadelphia School District is being plagued with, and making everyone have a little bit of buy-in and feeling like they're also partially responsible for what goes on, will just make us overall a more effective program and just really build that community partnership. And then so for brand management recruitment, like I said, we have very weak recruitment efforts. Not a lot of people know who we are. I really want to do a booth at our new student orientation and activity fair. I think this is something we should have been doing. Like I said, we didn't have a person who thought that it was their responsibility to make this happen. So that's something the president and I are already working on, like securing our booth on Penn's campus, and that way when all of the freshmen are coming through and like some of the upperclassmen, they know exactly who we are. And we will be wearing these great Comfort Colors tank tops that I designed by sticking the logo on there. And then I also want to host information sessions that are advertised with flyers and dorm storming. For those of you who aren't familiar with what dorm storming is, it just means printing out kind of like an index-sized card that says like, come to Penn Health Initiative, we have pizza. And then you stick it under every single freshman dorm door so they know. That's how at Penn, that's how a lot of freshmen figure out what they're going to do, to where they're going to go to visit information sessions, is dorm storming. So that's something I definitely want to take advantage of. Then I also want to establish a website and a social media presence. We actually have a Facebook page that just hasn't even been active in like the past year because once again, we don't have a person that's in charge of that. So I've also just established a new role that's just Vice President of Brand Management Recruitment who would be responsible for doing this. And I want to establish like an actual website because I think that what we do is website worthy, and I think there are a lot of people who would be interested in this if they just knew that it existed. And then t-shirts at the bottom, like I just mentioned. So here's my timeline. It's very tentative, and I didn't go too in-depth because Penn Health Initiative is a group effort, and I'm not the president of the organization. So I have to have everybody's support on this. And while the president has been very forthcoming in her support, it's still a lot of people, you know, when it's just on paper, it sounds like it's a great idea and everybody's going to be happy to work with that. But actually implementing it when you have students who have varying schedules and not a lot of time to devote in the first place is definitely going to be a challenge for us, I think. So this is what I've worked out for now. I think all of these are attainable, but I'm definitely going to be working with her in the future to really figure out exactly what we want to do and when we want to do it. And then some of the challenges we're going to face in this process is buy-in from the current members of Penn Health Initiative. While all of our volunteers are extraordinarily dedicated to the point of spending their own money to make sure that we remain an active organization, the laxness of Penn Health Initiative in the past few years has kind of been what makes it very attractive. Because we're not very organized, we don't really have consequences for people missing shifts, and it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's obviously a problem. I have a feeling that when we are implementing these changes and it becomes a more serious activity where, you know, you have to be on time all the time, I feel like we could see some pushback. Even if they don't explicitly say that they're not excited about these changes, I just feel like that's college. And then also limited influence over the Philadelphia School District. We can't control a lot of the issues that plague us in the first place. The school that I teach at actually, we were actually a part of the established curriculum, and then we had to move to an after-school care program just because of budget cuts and like teachers being fired and like parts of the school shutting down. And so obviously when those things come our way, we just have to figure it out really quickly as a very unorganized student body. So my hope is that organizing us a little bit better will make it much easier for us to tackle issues like that whenever they come our way in the future. And then these are a lot of changes to implement in a short amount of time. I think everything that we need to do is fairly urgent, at least as far as defining responsibilities, getting SAC recognition, getting our name out there on campus. This all needs to happen at the very beginning of the school year when everybody's looking for new organizations to join and figuring out what they want to do for the next 4 years at Penn. So that's something that's going to be a challenge, especially because I'm going home to Mississippi after this. I'm not going to be anywhere near anyone in Penn Health Initiative. So trying to communicate across such a geographical divide when everyone's working is going to be a struggle. So what I want to see for outcomes as far as Penn Health Initiative as a group, I just want to see that everyone is aware and committed to I really do think outside of funding, this is our biggest issue. It's just, it's such a ragtag of times when we meet. And I think if we just meet scheduled times every month, everybody knows what's expected of them, that'll solve so many of the problems that we have. And then I also want members of Penn Health Initiative to participate in recruitment and social events because I really want to establish that community among the schools, not just within them. That's what the social events are for. And then also for recruitment because we all know representation is important, diversity is important, and we're never going to get that if we keep recruiting the way that we have. Long term, I just want the overall organization of Penn Health Initiative to improve. I think with what I've laid out here, that's very possible. It's just a matter of actually implementing those things and following through. And then I also want Penn Health Initiative to become a more diverse and closer-knit group. So like I said, just more community, more teachers from backgrounds to represent our kids. And then as a program, I want to see increased communication with the Philadelphia teachers and school officials. Like I said, that's not entirely on us, but I'm hoping if we make more of an effort and are more organized, then it'll be a lot easier for us to communicate with them in the future. And then I also want an improved curriculum so that participants are better informed of how to make healthy lifestyle choices. Because it's very important to us to make our curriculum tailored to the needs of inner city school children. You have to consider that they're not in charge of a lot of their meals right now. You have to consider that for the most part they're not being faced with questions about sex and like substance abuse. And eventually they will, and right now we only service 11 to 13-year-olds. So we really want to make it to where they remember Penn Health Initiative when they are faced with those choices and they remember the things that we taught them to act accordingly. And then long term, I just want an overall closer relationship with the Philadelphia School District because they know we're there and they kind of know what we're doing, but they're not really involved. And I just think having them more involved would be better for our teachers who don't have any formal training. It would be really nice if we could have kind of like mentors or just a teacher in the classroom with us to watch how we teach and let us know if we need to improve in areas or give us suggestions about certain things. So that is definitely a long-term goal because right now I have to fix Penn Health Initiative before I can start tackling the Philadelphia School District. And then I also want, in the long term, participants to apply the knowledge taught by Penn Health Initiative whenever they're given the opportunity. And I want them to spread that knowledge to their younger siblings and their classmates who don't have the opportunity to participate. Because they're not being told these things in their classroom, they're not being told at home, and somebody needs to tell them. So that's what we're seeking to do. I also want to expand to more schools in West Philadelphia. Every single school in West Philadelphia is underfunded, underperforming, and in need. So we actually kind of have a surplus of teachers right now with how many schools we service. So I would be really excited if there were a way for us to move into more schools, and everyone at Penn Health Initiative wants that too. But like I said, we have to be a better organization before we can make that happen. And I also just want a higher profile presence in the community partnership realm because Penn has a big center for community partnerships, and there are lots of known organizations. We're not really one of them, and that's our own fault. So I'm just trying to move towards that. So with a more high profile presence, it'll be a lot easier for us to get funding, recruit more diversity in members, etc. So defining success. My immediate goals are just to implement everything that I've talked about here today. That's obviously the entire point of my capstone is just making this happen. And then in the future, essentially what I'm saying is like I just want to expand the program as long as it is at the best possible it can be before we expand. I think we have potential to do so much for the West Philadelphia community, and right now we're wasting it just by being very unorganized. So that's all I have for you guys, and I will take some questions now. Melissa?
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. What I'm not totally familiar with the structure of like Penn State, of course, but like do you have any relationship? Are you sorry?
It's okay.
Like what? Okay, so that's my question though. What's the connection like with like the student health center and
Mhm.
sort of medical centers that might be affiliated with the system? Is that something that has been explored at all?
That's something we're trying to look into because right now, because we're recognized by the Civic House on campus,
Right.
that's kind of just been good enough for everyone throughout the years. But I really want to move into a closer partnership with the medical centers on campus,
Yeah.
just because, like I said, our teachers are untrained, and we make the curriculum ourselves. And most people are pre-med, but they're still just undergrads. So it'd be really nice if we had like someone who actually does this for a living to
Right.
help us in our efforts.
Right.
Yes, next to Melissa. Yes. Yes, we do background checks through the Civic House.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on some of the positions that you're creating for selection
these are things that still have to be discussed with the rest of Penn Health Initiative and my president. So they're all just tentative, but I think it's a good starting place at least. And then, what was your second question? Oh, sustainability. So like I said, we kind of have a surplus of teachers, and the teachers all work very closely with us, even though they're not a part of the executive board. So a lot of the teachers are aware of like what the other positions are, and many of them are interested in moving up. It's just we haven't really had opportunities for that yet, because our president was a junior this past year. She'll be president next year when she's a senior. So it's really just a matter of like people going on. There's definitely demonstrated interest, and the program has been around for 3 years already and has managed to hang on this long, even with all the problems that I described. So I don't really see sustainability being an issue. I just see sustainability of what I want to implement being an issue, because I think everyone seeing that we still are effective with how unorganized we are is kind of an incentive for people to still be unorganized, because college is college and they have a lot of things on their plate. So, yes, sir.
So how do you become president of this organization? You get a phone call from this other president. There you go.
I'm actually not really certain, because like I said, we haven't had any. So I moved up from it. I taught my freshman year, and I'm a site leader for Huey. So I don't actually teach anymore. I'm basically like the president of the Huey teachers. And I'm like, I feel like everyone at this point like wants me to be president. So it shouldn't be that hard for me to get up there if that's something that I'm interested in. But I'm not